facilities as one of the sources of funding for such uses, improvements, or potential acquisitions for purposes mentioned above. This committee shall make a report independently, or if they choose, in conjunction with another board, including any proposed warrant articles to implement its recommendations to be presented at or before the 1993 annual town meeting.
You've heard the motion. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation? Mrs. Belmonte? Mr. No? Finance Committee is taking the matter under advisement and will make a recommendation. The Chair will proceed to allow discussion. Ms. Mullen. State your point of order, Mr. Sylvia.
Would you be so kind as to read that motion, please?
Yes, sir. All right. Ms. Mullen, if you would just stand back for a second while the Chair reads the motion. I move to supplement the membership of the Land Utilization Committee established under Article 1 of this town meeting by adding thereto ex officio members to represent the following boards and committees: Recreation and Conservation. Said members to be designated by a majority vote of the board or committee they represent. I also move that liaison members be appointed by the following boards and committees to work with the said Land Utilization Committee: Selectmen, Finance, Community Planning, School Committee, and Housing Partnership. I also move to supplement the charge of the said Land Utilization Committee as follows. The charge is to work with the existing committees to establish goals and methodology and study and investigate the feasibility of acquisition and/or utilization of lands within the town for use as open space, aquifer, floodplain, and wetland protection, passive recreation, recreation sites, parklands, and other similar uses consistent with the enhancement of the quality of life in North Reading. Also, specifically, to work with the existing North Reading Master Plan of Open Space and Recreation as part of your charge. That the committee further study the feasibility of the use of surplus monies from the operation of the Hillview facility as one of the sources of funding for such uses and improvements or potential acquisitions for purposes mentioned above. This committee shall make a report independently or, if they choose, in conjunction with another board, including any proposed warrant articles to implement its recommendations, to be presented at or before the 1993 annual town meeting. Ms. Mullen.
Mr. Moderator, fellow citizens, my intent of this motion is to include a citizens committee with the existing boards that are already in place, which according to the town charter is the charge of these boards. The CPC is responsible for the physical and environmental planning of the town. Also, they are responsible for the development and annual updating of a comprehensive plan. The CPC shall make a report annually to the town meeting on the status of the comprehensive plan. The town of North Reading already has a conservation and recreation open space plan in place. This plan was prepared to give focus and direction to boards, officials, and citizens of North Reading as they seek to improve the town's conservation and recreation services and facilities. This open space plan had participation from Recreation, CPC, Conservation, DPW, the Hillview Study Committee, and the Council on Aging back in 1987 when it was first made for when we had the taking over of the Hillview. This plan analyzes, sets goals, and studies the needs of the town of North Reading. I have included as members Conservation and Recreation as they are appointed by the town administrator, not elected members. The CPC, the Selectmen and School Committee are elected, and the Finance is appointed by the moderator, the Housing Partnership appointed by the Selectmen. I feel as liaison, these last four groups can add valuable input to the committee, but at not compromising the positions as members of their respective boards. I feel it's extremely important to have some continuity between the past and the present ideals and philosophies, and I feel equally important is to have members of the existing boards work to expedite the passing of information and knowledge of all involved in this endeavor, and for all boards and committees to have some ownership in the overall plan. Without these boards and committees being involved with the new Land Utilization Committee, I see much duplication of efforts and possibly 2 to 3 groups making recommendations on the same pieces of properties, same ideas on different pieces of properties, and even monies from the Hillview being spent in many different ways. For that reason, I think it is vital that the Finance, CPC, Selectmen, and School Committee are involved from the very beginning so they have time to examine these uses. They have time to examine what these uses would be in their general government and school budgets by the time it comes back to the town meeting. So when a presentation is made, hopefully all boards would have had time to examine what's being presented at town meeting and would all be in support of one proposal. I believe this proposal would be what's in the best interest of the town. I have spoken with several people on this motion. Many think it's very idealistic. It sounds very nice, but can everyone really get along and work together? I feel we can, but better yet, I feel we have to. It involves all of us, mostly today's children and tomorrow's children. And if we can't all, and I mean all of us, put our differences aside, then we have sadly failed as a community. I, as a citizen, will not give up on trying to make this idealistic community, or as the young lady said at the last meeting, utopia. I ask for your support in this article, and after I wrote this last week, I thought it might come up on Monday. I spoke to Mark Harmeling and 3 or 4 members that were mentioned in the first Article 1 because I wanted to make sure they were aware what I was doing, that I was not trying to take anything away from Article 1. I was upset at the last meeting that I felt a lot of things that came up under 1 would have had to come up under 16. And I stewed over it for a couple of days. Then, of course, bigger and better things came along. Hillview members, who's in and who's out, the selectmen's race, who's in, who's out, school committee race, who's in and who should be out, letters to the editor, letters by the editor, letters about the selectmen coming, letters from not yet selectmen. Is the checkbook imbalanced, and who can we blame? Where's the Veterans Memorial going? How big or how small will it be? And how many wars will be on it? How many soccer fields do we really need, and is the lawn going to be mowed? It also makes you almost forget the color of the library when we discussed that about a year ago. With all of this going on, does anybody really remember the positive things we've accomplished? The new library, the newly renovated high school, Kids Spot, the little school playground, most all the high school teams this past year, and the marching bands and cheerleaders won the championships. Yet we had some pretty low spots this past year with the loss of Walter Miller and Joe Clark, and teachers here for over 25 years, David Lum, the custodian, and the former selectman Dick Murphy. Did we even have time to grieve these men? And I sometimes wonder if we took all our negative energy and funneled it positively, maybe we could address some of the stresses that Sue Patton brought up the other night. More serious things like child abuse, AIDS, rape, suicides, drug, alcoholism, and unemployment. They're burning and bashing in Los Angeles tonight because of the police acquittal, a major difference of opinion. And we're bashing and trashing in North Reading because of differences of opinions. Somehow, folks, we've got to put things in perspective. Let's please all put down our weapons and try to find some middle ground. Thank you.
Mr. Canny.
The Board of Selectmen welcome Mrs. Mullen's attempts here. But again, we're going to depend on council's opinion and not an emotional opinion. The Board of Selectmen realize, and with an election coming up shortly, the candidates are all here, and they realize that town meeting is looking for a committee to do this study. That committee under the charter is to be appointed by the Board of Selectmen. There is no provision in the charter for the moderator to appoint anyone but the Finance Committee. So your message is understood, but make sure that it's done the correct way and that committees are done and appointed by the correct authority, because that's the way your charter was set up. If you do something other than that, then you're going to have a state of anarchy. and I don't think you want that. You want your committee, you want the results of that, you want the study, have it done the right way. Defeat the motion. Again, we welcome Mrs. Mullins' attempt at this, and we salute her, but we ask that it be defeated until you can have this committee appointed by the selectmen. Thank you.
Mr. Askenase.
Richard Askenase, 8 Irwin Road, and clerk of the Planning Commission. The CPC supports this motion and supports the concept behind the motion to set up this study committee. Ms. Mullen came before our board a few months ago and reviewed this with us, and we very much support the idea that's behind this. I'm not, and the board is not stepping into the issue as to whether it's a legal motion or not, and the issues brought up by town council and so forth like that. We're not stepping into that. The concept of this study committee is something that we very strongly endorse. The CPC has spent quite a lot of time over the last 2 years analyzing and updating the master plan for this town, something that had not been done since the early 70s, and using that as the tool, as the starting tool to help us revise zoning bylaws. Last October, we put forward a series of zoning bylaw changes that we think are going to have a very positive impact on the business community in this town. We've got a few small modifications tonight to refine that, and we're looking for some others down the road as well. The concept of the master plan, developing it out, utilizing it as the starting point to coordinate recreation, open space, aquifer protection, which the board put before this town and got passed, and so forth like that, is a central part of what the planning board is all about. This kind of committee is essential for this town because it's not just elected people or appointed people, it's citizens-wide in the town. It's very important. So we urge that you support this. We think that it's a very good idea for the town.
Mrs. Belmonte.
Finance Committee would recommend Mrs. Mullins' article because we think that it would enhance this committee. We're not questioning whether it's legal for the town moderator to appoint or the selectmen or what, but we do feel that with the recreation, the conservation, and all the liaisons, this would further enhance this committee and make it a town-wide committee.
Mr. Woods. Please state your name and address, sir.
Brian Wood, 21 Chestnut. From what I'm hearing, there seems to be a general consensus that this is a good addendum to Article 1, but at the same time, if we pass the amended article and it is indeed invalidated at a later date, then we have pretty much wasted our time here. Is it conceivable that we could get an opinion from council as to which would be the best road to take here? If we need to amend this Article 16 again to reflect the right body to appoint the members, then we should do so this evening.
Mr. Murder, would you care to answer Mr. Wood's question?
Mr. Moderator, Everett Marder, Copeland and Page, through you to this distinguished body. There may have been a misunderstanding in something I may have said previously. Let me, in all due respect to previous speakers, let me state that it is traditional that a moderator may appoint committees, study committees, that are determined necessary by the town meeting, because he is an agent of the town meeting, he is the moderator of the town meeting, and it is my opinion that the moderator may appoint study committees. Under the town charter, the town meeting has the authority to investigate boards, commissions, activities, and of course the town meeting only meets twice a year or 3 times a year, depending on how many special meetings there may be. Therefore, they're really not in a position to do their investigating without appointing committees to do it. So in my opinion, it is appropriate for the town meeting to appoint a study committee. It is a warrant article for that purpose, number 16, and it would not be inappropriate for the moderator, if that's the choice of the town meeting, to make those appointments. Let me answer that question and close at that point, but let me go on and answer the question that perhaps is about to be asked, and that is whether or not this article allows for the appointment of such a committee, since a similar committee was appointed already a couple of weeks ago by this town meeting under Article 1. and in that case, obviously, you can